Mean Old Lion Media presents Corner Table Talk.
Welcome, everyone, to Corner Table Talk, where we engage in conversations with our guests on subjects around food plus drink plus culture. As always, you can reach me at brad@postandbeamhospitality.com with your questions and comments. So it's summertime, and after the year and a half that we've had, we could all use a treat for the soul, and I think today delivers just that. You know, when I was a kid, we would all listen for the ringing of the chimes of the Good Humor Man and then run to jump in line for our favorite, whatever the selection might be, at his truck. I'm not sure if my love of ice cream started there or maybe the soft served twists of chocolate and vanilla at Nancy's Snack Bar by the boat dock in Oak Bluffs on Martha's Vineyard before or after the Flying Horses. Of course, there was that first standalone Haagen-Dazs shop in our neighborhood on 74th and Columbus on Manhattan's Upper West Side. I could go on. Of course, I am a lover of ice cream. So when I heard what my next guest was up to, she seemed like the perfect summertime person to have on the show. My guest today, Lokelani Alabanza, is the creator of Saturated, her own brand of plant-based, hemp-derived CBD ice cream. Bet that's a new one for most of you. Lokelani is based in Nashville. She attended the New England Culinary Institute and gained her culinary experience working in Denmark as a private chef, as well as Japan. She relocated to Los Angeles and worked with the renowned pastry chef, Elizabeth Belkind. Loki's passion for pastry cooking was ignited there. She also worked with Elizabeth at the James Beard Award-winning LA institution, Campanile. She was exposed to the well-respected Dahlia, Narvaez, and Nancy Silverton, the legend. Nancy, for those of you who don't know, started in Wolfgang Puck's original Spago and was the pastry chef there. She and her husband, Mark Peel, who was, on a side note, very sadly, suddenly passed away this year at 66. So the food world was shocked, and we send our condolences out to Mark's family. But on that note, both Mark and Nancy together opened Campanile in 1989, and happened to be the year I moved to Los Angeles. And Pulitzer Prize food writer Jonathan Gold said of Campanile, quote, "It is hard to overstate Campanile's contribution to American cooking," end quote. That's pretty high praise from Jonathan. So we will dig into Lokelani's experience there. Her journey continued from LA to Nashville, where she became the culinary director for Hattie Jane's Creamery. Last year, she launched Saturated, which is not a brick and mortar. And we will discuss her decision to do it virtually, the way she has created her business. I discovered Lokelani from a piece she wrote in Oxford American spring food issue titled Monumental Flavor. Lokelani, it's so nice to meet you, and welcome to Corner Table Talk.
Hello, I'm happy to be here.
Great to have you. So we kick things off with our short order questions. So I'll just shoot a few at you, get your quick response, and then we will dive into our conversation. So first up, what is in heavy rotation on your playlist? What are you listening to?
Okay, I've gone down this weird R&B path lately. So Biggie's One More Chance has been playing, some D'Angelo. I think I was listening to, I don't even know what I was listening to yesterday. I've just gone down this like nostalgic summertime 2099 whatever era. So.
Is it D'Angelo's Brown Sugar?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah,
Brown Sugar, the album, and then I think like Destiny's Child is like brought up. Keisha Cole's been in there. Like it's just that's been this week though. That's just this week. So things change.
Things change. I hear you. So tell me, what, if you can narrow it down, what's your favorite thing about living in Nashville?
You know, I have to say, for me now, at this point in my life, it has been my community, my tribe that I have built here in the last 6 years. And that has made the city so special for me. So that's something that I hold very dearly.
That's cool. Did you, having lived in LA, did you find that it was easier to create that kind of tribe, as you call it, in Nashville, or not much different, just a new place?
I think it was easier in LA because, you know, in LA, I was in the business, in the food industry so deeply, you know, so I was at several different restaurants at one time. So you just start to make friends, and then it becomes your family, and you start hanging out more and more. I had a massive tribe in Los Angeles, to the point where I think I had 3 going away parties when I moved to Japan. It was so heartbreaking. People were like, "You are really moving? You're leaving LA?" And I was like, "I'm leaving LA." Like,
And not like to go to Austin, but to Japan.
yeah, to go to Japan of all places. I know. I remember our general manager at Besso restaurant, he said to my mom, he goes, "She's really leaving?" And my mom said, "Yep, that's Loki." She's got when she's got an idea, it's happening. She's determined.
Yeah.
It's done. So
Yeah.
yes.
But isn't that great? I've noticed that too in the places that I've had. I mean, you definitely form some lasting bonds and friendships with the people that you work with, right?
100%. I turned 40 this past spring and I was sad because, I had this epic party, that I wanted. Of course, COVID had different plans for everybody. But what happened was there were about 60 people on the Zoom call and they were from each part of my life. So starting, let's say in Los Angeles, and then when I moved to Japan, and then when I moved to Las Vegas and from here. And so that sort of showed me the type of connection that I've had over the course of, I don't know, 15, 20 years.
Really interesting. And for those of you who, you won't be able to see Lokelani and I can, there must be some age defying ingredient that she puts in her ice cream because she does not look 40. She looks about 20. So, but she won't reveal that, I'm sure.
No,
So
thank you.
we'll
I
move
appreciate
on.
that.
Must be something in that CBD. So tell me, Lokelani, you're a traveler. Where are you looking forward to visiting?
I definitely want to go to Mexico City. It's a place I was going to go before the pandemic hit, but I really, really want to go explore Mexico City and Oaxaca. Those are the 2 places that I'm ready to go to, and possibly Colombia, because they have a cacao plantation there that I've been wanting to go to for, oh my gosh, I think a decade, because I use this chocolate called Cordillera, which I love so much. It's becoming harder to find, but I would love to have, someone walk me through the cacao plantation, taste the cacao bean, so it would just be an amazing experience for me as a pastry chef / ice cream maker.
Yeah, and / who knows what next. So
yes.
yeah, that sounds great. So it's a night out in Nashville. Where are you dining and what are you having?
So one of my favorites is City House Restaurant. Tandy is the owner, and then Rebecca Tershin is the amazing pastry chef there, who's a dear friend of mine. It's magic. I tell everyone that comes to the city, you have to go to City House. It is, you have, the pizza's good, the desserts are good. It doesn't matter what you have. It's going to be delicious. You're going to drink good wine. You're going to have a good time, and it's completely worth your time when you come to Nashville.
Alice actually mentioned that restaurant to me when I was asking her about some places in Nashville, and I went online and I looked at them. It looks phenomenal.
It's the best. And Rebecca and I, we do her cookies. She's known for her cookie plate. She has these amazing cookies and you can order them as a dessert, but we started she makes ice cream sandwiches. So last summer and this summer, I'll do an ice cream and then she'll put them in her ice cream sandwich. And it's just the best collaboration we possibly could do. So it's great. It is a must do when you come to Nashville. A must.
That's worth the visit right there. An ice cream sandwich, the one that you just described. Okay, so who past or present would you most like to host at an intimate dinner party, and what flavor ice cream would you make?
So I always say my maternal grandmother, Margaret Yarbrough, because she passed when I was 12. And so she never was able to see me become this pastry chef or do these things. And also she would not allow me to be in her kitchen ever as much as I wanted. I was so curious as a kid, but she is, who nourished me and protected me as a child. And so I would love nothing more. And I would definitely, we know that Jamocha almond fudge was her favorite ice cream flavor. She only did 2. It was Neapolitan were the ones she bought, which is what I grew up eating. And then Jamocha almond fudge. So somewhere in between that, I would have to make a version of those flavors for her to have an experience.
Oh, that's so sweet. I'm sure she's looking down with some pride at you, and what you're doing. Tell me your fondest childhood memory around food.
It's got to be, it was the holidays. Thanksgiving was always a really big one. It was just looking, when you're a child, everything just seems so much larger. The table's bigger, and I was small enough to hide under the table. So I would wait till the table was covered in food. And then I would crawl out and peek up. and just see, I mean, copious amounts of, greens, a turkey, a ham, biscuits. I mean, just whatever was on this table was magical. And those are the memories that I think of constantly. I think that's why I love Thanksgiving so much as an adult, more so than any other holiday. I make such an effort to make sure all the things that I had as a child are present at the table.
Yeah, that's, it's you're right. I mean, you created an image for me. And I think about my mom, who I lost a few years ago, and how many hours she would put into that meal, and the lifting the turkey out of the oven, a 20 some pound bird, would hurt her back and she'd want me to rub her shoulder after. And then I came to really, really appreciate just how much work, aside the love too, but it was a lot of work that went into making that much food. But boy, what a special day, huh? The smells and the tastes and the flavors.
Oh yeah. It's so nostalgic. It is, I mean, and see, like, for you just to describe all that, like, it's so specific, and that's what food does. Food is so powerful. That's what it pulls up, those memories, which are always really beautiful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, how you doing, and how have you handled the challenges of this past year, and how has the summer shaped up for you in Nashville?
So I'm doing well. I have a lot to be grateful for. It's been an interesting, I mean, the last year, I remember some of it, some of it I don't, because it was just expanded and, to create, it was just a lot. But it's like, no matter what happens, somebody still wanted to eat ice cream, which is amazing considering everything going on. Right. There was a moment where no one was leaving their house. Then there was a moment where people were the trepidation and people were slowly coming back out. Now it's like, okay, we're all back out. We have another little issue, but people still show up. I actually had an event last week called Porter Flea, which is twice a year here in Nashville. It's this beautiful artisan market. People from all over the country come. You have to apply. And I did it twice last year. It was virtual. So I didn't get to see people in person. They would just order online. I would fill the orders and then have them delivered. And this time I was actually there, which was, it was a different feeling because you're out, you have a table, you're set up. And what was so great about it were people would show up and they'd say, I've been following you for so long and I finally get to have your ice cream. Like, I've been chasing this unicorn. Like, it's just, I finally found you. So that was a really great feeling to know that, sometimes you get nervous about what you're putting out in the world and you think, do people still want this, even though time has passed? But they do. They've been supportive. So it is summertime.
Were they mostly local folks, or were you getting people from out of town as well?
It's local. And I also get a lot of, DMs and a lot of emails about, because I have a website. So it's like, you can go on the website, you can send me a message and, I try so hard to get back to you. And it's like, okay, if you want this, we'll make sure you can get it. I just feel like that's the best type of customer service, especially when you're a smaller business. But also it's a one-woman show, just doing all the things, which is worthwhile. But also I had to learn a lot about the CBD world, and that took a lot of months, many weeks and months to figure out. There's a lot of red tape. There's a lot of hurdles. You have to get around it. And so I kept thinking, if I had just made regular ice cream, this would have been different. But I'm happy that I made the choice that I made. I've learned a lot. And I have an incredible neighbor across the street. He has taught me so much about it. He has farms and they grow their product and actually use their product. So it was like kismet. It just worked out. So, but no, it's August. It's still the hottest month. I mean, in the South.
Hot and steamy.
Yes.
Curious, did the roadblocks that the pandemic created for so many businesses, did that affect you, or were you better suited for it because you weren't brick and mortar?
I was better suited for it because I didn't have employees. I didn't have brick and mortar. I'm originally out the gate. I had just come from a brick and mortar for 4 years. I helped build build a concept for somebody. And I knew within that was something that I didn't want. I knew that, e-commerce is the future, obviously, right? And it really showed that last year. But it's also gut-wrenching what's happened to the food industry in the last year, how many places have shuttered and closed permanently. Like, that's heartbreaking. It takes so much to go from an idea to an actual standing restaurant that pays people, and you create beautiful stuff and moments for people. So I just thought, well, if I have this little idea, I make it subscription, people order it, let's try it out. So it
Let's see
sort
what
of,
happens.
yeah,
Yeah.
and see what happens. It actually, the timing, it was all the timing.
Mm-hmm.
My dad
Mm-hmm.
specifically said to me when I told him I was permanently laid off, he said to me, okay, well, you better start that business. And I went, what?
Well, let's take a step back there because I think that's a really important point. Obviously pivotal for you. But it's also that, that classic when opportunity and preparation meet, it's when, good things can happen and luck, crosses that line as well. But so you were laid off from the creamery that you helped to build, right? Because
Yes.
of COVID and and cutbacks that were unavoidable. And that set you up with, an opportunity. And based on the fact that you'd accumulated the skills that you had, and as you just alluded to, said, Lokelani, this might be that time. So did you embrace that moment, or did you have a little bit of a down moment? Damn, I lost my job, or did you bounce right back and say, I'm jumping right into the next thing?
So I had this idea for a while, like maybe like a couple of years, right? I had been brewing, but it was time for me to go. Like it was just time for me to leave that job. Like it was just ready. It was time. So the universe was like, if you don't, I'm going to make it happen for you. And that's what happened. I got shoved out of the nest, which is fine. And I realized, oh, I do have wings. I can fly somewhere and wherever I want. And it was very serendipitous. Like everything just lined up the way that it was supposed to. So yeah, when you're somewhere for so long and your handprints are all over it and it's part of what had you grow, it was a good platform to jump off of, you carry those emotions. There's no way I could sit here and say, no, it didn't affect me, So it was like, oh, I got laid off. And I was like, okay, also it's COVID. Also what's next? X, Y, and Z, we're going through all these things. And then I had that moment of, okay, it's okay. And I had so much support immediately. And then when my dad made that comment of now it's time, it was like, okay, this is what you need to do. So then it went to like, get your LLC, get these things ready, get this going, you've already have a name, get someone to make a logo. Oh, you already had that done. You had this business plan, so just start making things happen. And I tell the story all the time, I bought 100 cups and I had that imposter syndrome, which now I know is just like utter BS. Just like leave it at the door, just say, hey, I didn't think anyone was going to buy them. I thought it's going to take me a month to push this product. Like who's interested in CBD dairy-free ice cream? My friend came to me. She said, do you have a machine? And I said, yeah, my one just showed up at the door like a week ago. And she said, we're going to do this event at this CBD cafe. And I said, okay, like I'm not going out a lot. It's COVID. And she said, it's fine. You can stay outside. I filled 70 cups and I sold out within 2 hours. I think people that I had not seen for probably 2 or 3 years in the city had come out in the middle of a pandemic to support me and the brand. And that's when I realized, oh my gosh, like you're exactly where you're supposed to be, which I'm a firm believer on. You're exactly where you're supposed to be at the time you're supposed to be at, when things happen. And so it just sort of unfolded. And then after that, unreal. It's been wild. Dreams have been coming down the pipeline. It's just.
Well, let's stay here for a moment. I want to dig in a little bit to your background, but before we do, you weren't just this idea to do ice cream was just not, let me just do, chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry and put my name on it and make it really good and hope, you went CBD, dairy free. It's like you narrowed the lane, very specifically. Tell me about how that you arrived at that as your selected avenue.
So at the Creamery, I had to learn. I knew how to make ice cream, but I had to learn the science of it because there's people that love ice cream and there's people that have to know how to make ice cream, right? Those are two separate things. And so I had to learn the science. I had to learn the machinery. I had to learn how to work commercial. But I was making all these flavors. I'm at like 350 flavors that I've created, which is wild in the last 5 years. And I was looking at it and I went, you know what? People that can't have dairy shouldn't just have just coconut. Like that's not fair. And so I started pushing myself to make different non-dairy bases and flavors. And I have been doing a lot of research about, CBD, what it does. I had a friend that she unfortunately passed from cancer a few years ago, and she talked earnestly about CBD and what it had done for her. And I kept thinking, okay, well, people administer medicine in different forms. So what if it was in the form of ice cream, different things of that nature? And it occurred to me, okay, plant-based is the future. That's where we're going with food. And CBD is here and it is the future. This is where we're going. And we've been going this direction for a long time. So I thought, well, then how do you just put them together? But I had to figure out the right CBD to put in the right thing. And that's where I had to learn. So it just made sense. Like, it's hard to explain it. It was that method to the madness immediately. It was like,
there's chemistry. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
it was just like, Loki, just do this thing. So, I mean, the first few batches that I made were not, I mean, I had a tasting with a few people and it's like, can you feel the effects? How does this taste? All these things. Oh my God, that seems so long ago. And it was a lot of tinkering, but I figured the base out. So when I made decisions about the base and how I was going to make the base, so I'm not replacing milk, right? Milk is phenomenal. So is dairy. I don't think it can be replicated in the way that we want it to be, because that's what happens. You tell people to taste something, but it's going to have a reminiscent of something else. And that's what you want. You just want ice cream to have a good mouthfeel, to be cold, to be delicious, to have that flavor, to just taste good. And so those were the things that I wanted to work really hard on my flavors, but I also wanted them to be flavors that you didn't think we could possibly make. And that's sort of where the challenge came, and I fully accepted it. And that's how I got to narrow it down to plant-based and CBD.
So without, geeking out too much here on CBD specifically, but, I spent a little time in LA. We invested in a company that was, one of the startup legalized marijuana companies. So I spent some time looking at that industry and got interested in CBD. But from your standpoint, what was the contributing factor to deciding to put CBD in your ice cream?
I wanted to bring, so I tell everybody, I'm not here to cure anything. I'm just here to bring joy. That's it. I wanted it to be just something that I could administer. Just, it's not even peace or calm. It's just something that gets you, when I look at the demographic, 18 to 30 is about, they want it for, anxiety and stress. Anyone 30 and over is like pain management. I just want pain management. So when I thought about those two things, I thought, if I could give you this product and it tastes good and you don't know that the CBD's in it, but you want to know that that back pain was, subsided, or that maybe you were feeling a little anxious, or it's nighttime and you just want to sleep better, well, then why can't I give that to you?
Right.
So why can't I change this narrative instead of, you have to have it at breakfast, you have to have it at lunch, you have to have it at dinner. You can have it whenever you want, because it affects everyone differently, right? So that's sort of what made the most sense to me when I started thinking about, well, why CBD? Because like I tell everybody, you can have the product that I make you with or without, and you're not going to know the taste difference. It's just going to be the after effect. If there is even one for you, some people aren't as affected as much, some are. So also, I think the lack of knowledge around CBD is massive, and it's still getting people to know about how dynamic that it is. I mean, that plant is got so many extraordinary properties, and it's just getting people to know the value of it instead of pertaining it as a drug. And then, so there's so many other, that's a whole other conversation, but
So you're kind of disguising health benefits in ice cream.
Yes, without saying that, because unfortunately there's been so many people that have taken advantage of that
and make claims that are,
And so again, to the end of the day, I'm like, nope, we're just making ice cream. So yeah.
It's funny. I never ever thought I would use a Mary Poppins reference, but it sounds like just a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. Even though we're not saying it's medicinal, but let's just say it has some healing potential.
Yes.
All right, so let's dig back here a little bit. Tell us a little bit about you, where you're from, and what initially got you interested in the culinary industry.
So I was born in the Bay Area, in Redwood City, California. I was raised in East Palo Alto. And then, so I'm West Coast California kid, true and true. Very proud of being a Californian. I went to school. We lived in Santa Maria. I went to elementary school there, and then we moved to Southern Oregon. So I went to middle school and high school in Southern Oregon. And then when I graduated, my parents bought me a Eurail pass. And so I was gone for, I think, 6 or 8 weeks, back in late 99, 99, 2000, when your parents were just bye, see you in 2 months. I traveled all over Europe. And at that point, I wanted to be an actress. I had my parents fully convinced I was going to be an actress. And so I knew I loved cooking because I would run home and watch Yan Can Cook, The Frugal Gourmet, Julia Childs, Great Chefs of the World. Like I was obsessed. And the scene when Mr. cooks in The Color Purple, and then, Celie comes down and actually cooks the right breakfast for, Shug Avery. Like that was a big deal. And so I said, I think I'm going to go to culinary school. My parents were like, whoa, whoa, whoa. My dad's like, that's a fish out of water.
Wow.
He just did not understand it.
Mm-hmm.
So I go to Europe. My first job in a restaurant ever in my life was in Svendborg, Denmark, at a place called Sven's Hus, number 13. And it was a beautiful experience. I came home. My mom had a friend. She was a history major and art historian. And she spoke Italian, and she did Italian cooking classes. So I would help her. And eventually she opened a restaurant. I met her chef, and he's like, look, you should go to culinary school. And I named off all the ones. He's like, no, you need to go to Neki because they have the smallest classes. It's more intense. You'll learn more. And I thought, I've never been to Vermont before in my life. And this is before like the internet is like the internet, where I still had to print an application, handwrite it out, put it.
Imagine that.
This is not like today. Yeah. And I got in, and it was the first time I had been on the East Coast. It was the worst winter they had had in like 100 years.
Course.
I was ill-equipped with clothing. I did not have the right boots or shoes, none of that. And I went to culinary school, and it would really change basically the rest of my life. And so from culinary school, I wanted to be a chef. There were not a lot of women of color at the time. There were not a lot of females in the kitchen during that era.
So let me pause there for a second. So when you saw that, did you say, this is a lane that's interesting because I don't see many that look like me? Or were you intimidated that you didn't see many that look like you?
No, I thought I have to do this because no one looks like me. I mean, even on TV, I thought, I wanted a food show so badly. Like it was my focus was like, I want to be on TV for food because there's no one that I see that looks like me on TV, And that to me was always sort of that fuel. And it was still like that. Even in the kitchen, there were still not a lot of women when I was coming up. There were still not a lot of people of color when I was coming up. Like it just did not exist. I did not see Black women and or Black men. And so I get this job, or I get to school, and I do my internships. And at that point I realized, okay, well, I only took a month or two of my classes of pastry. So I knew a little bit of pastry, but it was more on the savory end of it. So I ended up moving to LA. I did my internships, and then in Portland, Oregon, and then one in San Francisco. And I could have stayed in San Francisco at that job, but my cousin was like, we're going to LA. We're going to LA. Oh my gosh. Or like early 2000s, mid 2000s LA. And so I get there, and my aunt owned this incredible catering company, but she said, hey, I can get you a job XYZ. So I remember going to Spago, seeing Wolfgang Puck, looking for Sherry Yard, and she happened to be off that day. And he said, she's not here today. And I said, okay, I'll just come back. And then we went to the friends and family opening for Grace Restaurant, which is Neil and Amy Fraser.
Neil Fraser, sure.
Who are like family to me. I've known them for so long. And Neil said, I don't have any openings in the kitchen, but there's one opening in pastry with my pastry chef, Elizabeth Belkind. And I said, okay. And so he goes, come on Monday. And I came on Monday, and that would be boom. Wow. That would set the course for the rest of my life, was that moment. And so Elizabeth had just come from Campanile, and I got a job there at the time. So I was doing double kitchen work, and then I got a part-time job at J. Crew. So I had 3 jobs.
And you were dressing well.
Yes. I had retail.
J. Crew'd up.
And I had food. Yeah. And so that was good J. Crew too, back at that time. So that was I was in LA for 8 years. My last job would be the executive pastry chef at Besso Restaurant, which was owned by Eva Longoria and Todd English at the time.
Yeah. On Hollywood Boulevard.
Yes. And I had just had an offer to go to Bouchon as a sous chef. And I had 24 hours to make a decision.
Beverly Hills, Bouchon?
Beverly Hills, yeah. And I had a 24-hour window to make a decision. And I went, oh my gosh, I don't know. Because I have this title and I have this thing, and I ended up not going with it, and I stayed. And then for some odd reason, I call it Saturn Returns, I decided to have my first, I'm going to have a quarter life crisis now. And I you know what? I think I want to get married. So I leave LA after 8 years. Everyone's blindsided. They cannot believe I'm leaving Los Angeles.
Mhm.
And I moved to Japan for 4 years, become a private chef there, and then and I do a little bit of like pastry stuff there on the side. It was a beautiful experience. Japan,
Where in Japan?
I was in Okinawa, Japan.
Hmm.
It was so amazing. Probably it has a spot in my heart forever. It is just the most
And
beautiful.
what was the reception like for you there? I mean, did you speak Japanese? Was it to integrate into the local society? Was that something that just came naturally to you? And were they receptive to you? What was that like?
We lived off base, which was, I thought, better off for us because you're inundated, like you're part of the culture at that point, you know? So
Mhm.
I'm shopping in Japanese stores. I'm driving around eating in places where no one speaks English, which is amazing, right? To a point where you're pointing at a menu. I took
Mhm.
classes for a month. Japanese was a tough language, but I was glad to at least know a little bit to ask for something. The reception, I had a really great time. I taught English classes. The kids loved it. I mean, it was great. I never felt out of place. I just felt that I was there. You know, we lived 10 minutes from
Mhm.
the seawall, and every night I'd go and watch, you know, the sunset into the East China Sea. Like it was
Mhm.
just amazing. I
Mhm.
made friends with this beautiful family who owned this bakery, and he just went by chef. She's like,
Mhm.
call him chef. I'm Taka. These are my children. But they would make these beautiful pastries. And he had been trained in Tokyo by a French chef, and he came down and
Mhm.
opened a bakery there. I mean, some of the best pizza I've had, and I've had pizza in Italy, was in Japan, which is
Wow.
crazy to
That's
think.
crazy. Yeah.
And I mean, I had no, I had a really, it was, I don't know if I'll ever live that way again in time in that place. And so
Mhm.
those 4 years, I never took one day for granted
Mhm.
because they were so extraordinary. And leaving
Mhm.
was very heartbreaking. Even when we would come home for the summer, I would have culture shock coming back to America because everything was just so big, so loud. It was a lot was going
Mhm.
on. But I would look at a map and think, "Oh my gosh, we live all the way over there on this tiny little island, and it takes so long to get there," you know?
Mhm.
But it's just filled with so much beauty. My stepmother is Japanese, and
Mhm.
so I have a brother who's half Japanese, and so it was always part of our family. So the food, the culture it wasn't new. It was
Mhm.
just new to actually go and travel and visit Japan. That was something that I had not done before.
And brave. You know, I
Yes.
mean, I think that says a lot to your fearlessness, and can understand how you also had the confidence then to go into business on your own.
Oh, yeah,
Before
that
we,
feet first mentality.
Yeah, have to have that.
Yeah.
Before we leave the Campanile legacy behind, I want to kind of come back to that because it's not insignificant, right? I mean, Campanile was like the temple
Oh,
in
yeah.
Los Angeles. I mean, Nancy, Mark, my old business partner Govan Armstrong, Suzanne Goen. I mean, you had some very prominent names that worked their way through the Nancy Silverton school. Did you realize at the time, Lokelani, that was royalty, that this was in fact the temple, and someone like Neil Frazier, of course, you're talking about some of that's the hierarchy of the LA food world. Were you aware of that at the time?
Well, it's funny. I received a book from my uncle, uh, and my aunt and uncle many, 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 many Christmases ago. It was a book called The Making or Becoming a Chef. And they knew I liked to cook, so they gave me this book. And it had stories of different chefs in it, quotes you could write, I went to this restaurant. It was sort of like a journal recipe book. Like it's very cool. I hand it out to anyone whose child or friends like, I want to be a chef. I'm like, this book was the best. And I remember reading quotes, and Mark Peel and Nancy Silverton had quotes in there. So I knew who these people were, right?
Mhm.
And the next thing I know, I'm at Campanile in the pastry department, and it's like, no, it's like, we know what's going on here. So I was very aware.
I
I
know who
used to
you
work
are.
alongside. Yeah, I was like, I'm aware of these things. But these are giants at the time. I
Mhm.
mean, that level of chef and what that was happening. I mean, that was the LA scene. That was the
Right.
scene. And
Yep.
so I was part of that in the background where, in that pastry department, learning so much. I mean, I told everyone that is my foundation was Campanile and Grace. And the reason I do, and of course, Claudia Fleming's book, The Last Course. I mean, the reason why I have the things or do the things I do now is because of that. They set that foundation for me. The rustic approach, the simplicity, like those are very specific. Those nuances are very Californian, very Southern Californian. And so, no, I remember working alongside Mark Peel back in the day on Mondays. I think it was Monday or Tuesday. He would do his fried chicken and I would be plating it at the end. So I've had, it was quite the experience. I mean, Govan, I remember when he had table 8. Like I remember these days, and I just never went to work for Suzanne. But I know friends that worked for her. So it's sort of like you came from Michael's and then you would see how everyone else branched out. But
I'll tell you a funny quick story about Suzanne. So I had a restaurant called Georgia in LA in the 90s, and Southern restaurant, and I wanted to do another place. And Fred Eric, who was a pretty well-known chef in LA, said, "Oh, I got someone who you really should go into business with. She's a pastry chef at Campanile, and she's looking to do something." And I said, "Okay, let me meet her." And it was Suzanne. So I had found a space that I thought was really great. So we did a tasting with a very prominent entertainment executive and his attorney, who was a foodie. And the entertainment attorney was not impressed. And we ended up not doing the deal. And it was Suzanne. Yeah. I was like, whenever I see him these days, I'm like, man, you know how much money you cost me?
Oh, man.
Hard to imagine that, right? He was not impressed.
Oh, wow. That's a good one. That's a good story. That's a good story. That's
so,
wild.
All right. So Northern California, you're a California girl, Denmark, Japan, LA. How does Lokelani Alabanza end up in Nashville, Tennessee? Nothing against Nashville, Tennessee, which is a very cool city, but how did that happen?
So I was once married, and he was from Portland, Tennessee, which is 6 miles from the Kentucky border, which is about 35 miles north of Nashville. So we went from Japan to Las Vegas, because I lived in Las Vegas for 2 years. And then it was I want to go home. And I thought, why do you want to go home? And I have family that lives in East Tennessee, and I've been in Nashville a handful of times. And I thought, why would we live in Tennessee? Why? I don't understand. And so we find our way here. I find a job here at the Hutton Hotel. They were looking for an executive pastry chef, and I got the job without even meeting anyone. We did it all on the phone and like email, which is wild. And so we moved. I moved from Las Vegas to here, and that was my job. And that's how I ended up 6 years ago, which is insane when I think about it, that I've lived in Nashville for 6 years. And when I got here, it didn't even look like the Nashville that it looks like now. This Nashville is an entirely different Nashville. People from all over the country are moving here. It's wild, wild, wild.
Yeah, I was there. My wife and I were there about 4 years ago, I think. And I was actually, I don't know what I was expecting, but I was shocked by the scene. Very cool restaurant scene, a lot of building going on. Obviously, music is a big deal there, but felt very cosmopolitan, but in a smaller, more contained, more localized, kind of way. And I really dug it. My son is a musician, and he absolutely loves Nashville.
Oh yeah, it's funny because those planes, the plane from LA to Nashville nonstop is packed. It's packed with people, musicians, actors, like everybody's coming here. No, it's grown. I mean, they're building. I mean, the things that they're opening up, it's just unreal. And also, I don't live downtown. I live on the east side, and so we're constantly like, no, it's fine. Everyone stay over on the other side. But yeah, everyone should come visit, but most people that come visit, they want to stay. Everyone that I know that comes, because I had a lot of visitors in Las Vegas. Let me tell you, we had people in the house every single month for 2 years, every month. I've had people come and they're like, I think I want to move here. We're looking for houses. And I'm like, wow. What? This is wild. So yeah, Nashville is it's the spot right now.
I think so. I think you're on to something there. So you go to work at Hattie Jane's Creamery.
Yes.
correct. And I read up on them. I mean, it's, the flavors of the ice cream, the description of how they do it. And it just, they talk about it as kind of a happy place. And how can you be unhappy around ice cream? So, but just what was that experience like? And then take us right into, okay, it was time that COVID kicked in, they made some layoffs and you moved on to saturated. But what was the experience like there? And what
Yeah,
did you gain?
so it was a wild experience. I came in as a chef at one of their pastry chef as one of their other companies, and I was not there for 1 week until they said, "Hey, we're opening this creamery in 2.5 weeks." It's like, okay, challenge accepted again. And so I went in, and there were no recipes, there were no flavors. So it was really, I had to dig deep to, I was nervous because I had not had that experience before. I know what it's like to be a pastry chef and compose dishes and write a menu. Like, I could do that in my sleep, but not, hey, make 12 flavors. They have to be consistent. You're using these machines that are commercial. So it was the education of my culinary career fully. And it has taught me my strengths, my weaknesses. It has taught me how to always trust myself. It's taught me what nostalgia really means for me, which is the foundation of who I am and also what my business is. And it's also taught me what a beautiful vessel ice cream is. And it holds a lot of memory, history. It has so much in it. And so it was 4 years. It was 4 years, 2 creameries going back and forth, but it was amazing to work with local farmers, local dairies. At one point there's this goat farm, and I got to go and get goat's milk from them and create an ice cream for them. And then they had it and they loved it. It's all these little things that worked out. But it was time. It was just time to go. It's a lot of work. Ice cream takes a lot of labor, and which we all know that's the restaurant. You don't get hung up on it takes so much time. It's always like, it took this many days and people ate it in this many minutes. This is just part of the cycle.
It's true.
Yeah. So from there, COVID hit. My last day of work was on St. Patty's Day, and I knew it. I knew in my gut. I said, I'm not coming back. I knew it. And then the next day I was laid off, and that was the beginning of,
So
where we're at
when
today.
you talked about, the task that you realized that you were taking on, and there were strengths and weaknesses to your game, let's just say. So when you looked at the areas in which you weren't strongest, what did you do to, strengthen that part of your skill set?
I
Are
had
you a
to
numbers person? Was it a little avoidance of that, or what was it that you would tend to not be that strong, and that you then said, I got to step up in this area?
Yeah, I'm not a numbers person. I'm fully like, I had to accept that I'm a creative person, that I'm a creator. Like, I had to accept that. I was like, you are a creator and you need to be okay with that. And also know, even now, like logistics, I don't love logistics, but I have to do them because I'm the only person running the company. So when I can get a director of operations, my whole life is going to change. It's going to be amazing. I used to fight with my dad. I was not good at math as a kid. He is the witness to this. And I said, I'm never going to need math. And he's like, oh, okay. And then I became a pastry chef. And now I'm like, oh, metric system, got it down. This is great. So I was like, oh, how the mighty have fallen. But it's one of those things where I had to challenge myself to get better at things. I mean, there was even parts of the ice cream where I was nervous about taking something that I knew was about, I could make 2 quarts with it. And then I had to fill up a 20-gallon tank. So you have to figure those things out, right?
Right.
So
Sure.
I would go, I'd ask questions. I mean, I say a lot. Ice cream's sort of a secret club. You have to like work really hard to get into the club and find out the people that'll let you in, because you have to ask the right questions. You have to figure out the right containers. You have to figure out the right scoops. You have to figure out just how to do things correctly. And so I had a friend at the time that we worked really well together because she was good with logistics and I was good with the creativity. So I was mostly the culinary director, creative person. But when it came to running my own business, I had gone to so many P&L meetings, so many manager meetings. It's also about leadership. Some people are natural born leaders. Some are not. Some people have to learn how to delegate. I had to learn how to do that because I always wanted to be the one that just did all the work. I'm the person that wants to make sure everyone's fair and we're all doing it together, but then I won't tell someone that I need help. So I had to learn how to do that. And that probably within the last year and a half has been my biggest thing, is to ask for help. It was always a struggle. And so just asking for help has made the world of difference, because people want to help. The one thing I think we forget is people's time, is very important. And it's a big deal when someone wants to help you with something. And I never try to take that for granted. But no, the Creamery allowed me to be the most creative I've been probably ever, where it pushed me to do things that I wouldn't have done before. I mean, I made a hot chicken flavor, an ode to Prince's hot chicken. I've made these wild things during that time, but it allowed me to like push that envelope. And so I didn't have a better place to do that. So that was an incredible platform, which allowed me to say, hey, I know I should probably make this plant-based CBD ice cream. I don't know what's going to happen, but we're just going to go out there and do it.
It's just so funny that's what comes to you.
Yeah, right.
I've got to make CBD plant-based ice cream. But before we move, I got to shout out to Kim Prince of the Prince family that you just alluded to. Kim is partners with my dear friend Greg Doolin in Los Angeles, and they opened up Hotville right across from our restaurant, Post and Beam. And they're doing some great stuff, and Greg's redoing his Doolin's restaurant on Crenshaw. But she is going to be thrilled to know that there is a hot chicken ice cream. That the idea of that in and of itself sounds like you should be on 60 Minutes discussing that with someone smart. But that's really cool. That's really cool, Lokelani. So Saturated comes about. Where did the name come from?
So I have a dear friend. I call her Sister Brooke. She's the mastermind behind, she's their culinary director at Smitten Ice Cream, which is in the Bay Area. She's incredible. We joke, if we came together and made ice cream, it'd be over for everyone if we came together. But we had dumplings in San Francisco. It was December. I was coming home for Christmas. And I said, look, I think I'm going to name it California Skies, because I met this woman who had named her daughter California Skies. And I was like, it's just going to be good with the CBD brand. And she went, no, you should call it Saturated, because the industry's saturated. And I went, oh, that's brilliant. Okay, well then it's Saturated. And so that's exactly where it was birthed, over dumplings in San Francisco.
Yeah, that's very cool. Did you make a deal on the back of a napkin for her rights to?
It was cute because her mom we listened to a podcast. I think it was Milkster. I don't even know. I was on a podcast last year, and she said, I didn't know, Loki, you named the company. And I was like, yes, she did it. So
that's so cool.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to talk a little bit about this article that you wrote in Oxford American. But before I do, I wanted to touch on quickly, what's the legality, Lokelani, around shipping CBD or, products like that? Because state to state laws are different. Obviously, the federal mandate is what it is for those kinds of products. So how do you deal with that? If I wanted your ice cream here in Miami, would I be able to do that? Would I be able to get it here?
It can be shipped. There's only 4 states that it can't be shipped to, but the majority of the 50 it can. So it does. It can go to Florida. It can go to LA. It can go to Tennessee. So those are legal.
All right.
Yeah, no, it's the THC ice cream that people make that cannot come to Tennessee because it is not legal in the state of Tennessee.
Okay, gotcha. So that's it, right.
Yeah, and that was another reason for CBD because I live here. It was like, well, what's legal for my city, for my state, which is, again, CBD, 3 things: broad spectrum, full spectrum's not legal in the state of Tennessee, but broad spectrum and isolate powder are. So those are the 2 that legally you can, it's not an issue.
Fantastic.
Also, like Delta 8 is a thing, which is strange, but that's a whole other conversation.
Okay. Well, that's good to know, because we will definitely be ordering some Saturated to disperse amongst my friends, but I will be sampling all of it before it goes anywhere. So as I mentioned, you wrote this beautiful piece in Oxford American's spring issue that was guest edited by Alice Randall, our friend, who's since become a friend of mine. I know you and her daughter are friends. And I thought your piece was beautiful. It really struck me. Great writing, and the information that that you provided. First, the flavor this idea of toasted fenugreek and chocolate ice cream. I'd never heard of fenugreek, didn't have any idea what that was, but the way that you described it and the ice cream that came as a result of it, I thought was just phenomenal. And you dedicated it to Sarah Estelle, who was an African-American woman who owned and operated an ice cream salon and boarding house in downtown Nashville in 1840. I mean, who knew, right?
Yeah.
And also to our current Vice President, Kamala Harris. So talk to me a little bit about that flavor, about your dedication, and about your piece.
Yes. Well, I have to always shout out Miss Alice Randall. She is just a gem. And I'm really very grateful for her for this piece. It was funny. The original piece was supposed to be about sweet potato ice cream. And then last minute she said, I want you to write about this thing. And I got a little nervous because I'm a voracious reader, but I don't think that I'm the strongest writer. So I was a little nervous about it. So it took me a long weekend to kind of gather my thoughts. We had a quick conversation. I felt really good about it. She gave me some notes and then I put together, Sarah Estelle for me has been just a massive point of reference, for this ice cream world and living in Nashville. And it's like she's this beautiful ghost that wanders with me, so to know that we're in the same city, we're doing the same things. I mean, you can't ask for anything better. And a lot of people don't know who she is. And so I'm glad to tell that story and to put it out there because it's so important, especially I don't think enough people know how many Black hands have been touching ice cream for such a long time and they're not aware of it. And so I'm proud to be a Black ice cream maker, and I'm proud to be in the city that she was making ice cream. So it was just to tell this story about her, about myself. So how do I connect the three of us together, in a way? And why can't a recipe become a monument? It's something that people do cherish so deeply. And it's something that you don't think would be that, but it does have a meaning, right? And people pass theirs on. I think also for myself, my grandmother didn't leave any recipes when she passed. And so I sort of have been filling that up with, lots of old cookbooks, other people's family recipes. And then I realized, oh, Loki, you've created these recipes of ice cream. So that's part of my own legacy, So it was exciting. When it came down to finding the flavor, I wanted to make sure that it expressed what Sarah possibly would have made, but also would bring in Kamala's Indian roots without being too obvious, So fenugreek is it's an old spice. It's been around for a very long time. And it has a really interesting flavor and smell and taste. And I had never made this flavor before, ever. And I made it actually, I think the day after it came out, the piece, I made it with a coconut base, with the plant base that I make. And I was like, well, I don't know what's going to happen. So it came together so beautifully. And I was really proud of it. I was proud that it was something that can showcase not only history, but tell this story. And I'm really proud of it. I'm proud of this piece. I was very excited. It was an honor to be, in the African American period.
Beautiful.
So
has our vice president had the pleasure of tasting this ice cream dedicated to her? Yeah.
No, but well, if only, that would be amazing.
Well, let's whisper it into existence here on Corner Table Talk. Miss Vice President,
Yes.
if you're listening, there's an ice cream flavor you should try.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Lokelani, if you wouldn't mind, we don't have time to read. I would love to read the entire piece to our audience, but we don't have time for that. But would you mind reading a little section from the beautiful article that you wrote for Oxford American?
Not at all. Both women of color, both groundbreaking, both endearing and outstanding. I am a Black woman, an entrepreneur, an American. My monument to both women is my ice cream. Sarah has become the North Star on my ice cream journey as an ice cream maker. Vice President Harris reminds me that no matter how arduous the path, there is glory waiting to greet you.
That's fantastic. That really is. So, yeah, I wanted to just breathe that in for a second. Thank you very much for that. So, if someone were interested in doing a pop-up with you, Lokelani, let's say on Martha's Vineyard, if Michelle Obama were to call and wanted something on Circuit Avenue in Oak Bluffs, are you open to doing pop-ups?
Oh, absolutely. I do
Yes,
a
you are.
collaboration. This is the collaboration season, and I receive all of the, amazing collaborations.
But also put that out into the universe that Michelle Obama, Lokelani, is also open to doing pop-ups, and perhaps on Martha's Vineyard, where better to do a great ice cream pop-up than that beautiful place. So Lokelani, before we let you go, and it's really been a pleasure. I can't wait to try your ice cream. Just tell the folks where they can find you. Give us your social info.
Yeah, so we have a website. It's saturatedicecream.com. So you can go in and see all the flavors. We have a little bit of history in there. It's very exciting. And you can order from there, or you can email us. And you can find us on Instagram at Saturated Ice Cream.
That does it. Well, Lokelani, thank you so much. It's really been a pleasure to talk to you, and I can't wait to try Saturated. Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you. This has been wonderful.
So here we go with How We Move and the lovely Ambassador Shabazz. What's happening, Ambassador?
Well, geez, was that wonderful or what? I mean, for me, it just touches so many different aspects of, it definitely is how one moves, right? She's the epitome of that. To be 40, as she acknowledged, and to have journeyed so many places, and she's journeyed from her birth city in the Bay Area to Los Angeles, to the Northeast, to Nashville, where she is now. But there were places in between there that she went to and continued collecting. I mean, that was in her article in Oxford American, as well as what she shared this time. And while people are pausing and trying to determine if it's a good time to travel, I'm going to say people need to apply for their passports. Just get ready, be ready, and have a good backpack and a suitcase. So when it's time to venture, journey, travel, you're ready. And that's what this young lady did. So when I listened to how Okinawa, who talks about Okinawa? I was referencing Okinawa to someone the other day just because of the people. The people look like the island cross-section of visitors. So it's not specifically a Japanese face. It's not specifically a Fijian face. And yet there's so much that goes, so I would imagine food, texture, history, narrative, stories. And this young lady, when you talk about nostalgia finding its way on the palate, or food being a monument to a story or one's existence. Just exciting for me to listen to her at this stage. And that this isn't the end of it. And even I'm, learning more about Nashville. My day, Nashville had one picture. Now Nashville is becoming yet this other, beckoning space or place. It's the second largest population or demographic in Nashville are Africans around the globe, American Blacks, international Blacks, Caribbean Blacks, finding their way there within the art, music, culinary, B&B spots. There's a young couple they started in New York, in Brooklyn, with something called Urban Cowboy. Have you heard about it? It's like a B&B, little spot, little eclectic spot. And someone told them, based on the cross sections of what the new Brooklyn has become and how it hosts its patrons, that they needed to go to Nashville. So there they are, Urban Cowboy. It's a B&B. They bought an old Victorian. And I'm just digging, listening to people daring to do it differently.
Yeah. What also got me about Lokelani's story is, as you mentioned, she spent a lot of time traveling abroad and saw, various parts of the world, from Denmark to Japan, and certainly growing up in the Bay Area, the Northeast, attending school at the Culinary Institute, living in LA, working at the temple that was Campanile, but under Nancy Silverton. And then just circuitously ending up in Nashville and deciding to go into the ice cream business, only to find out about Sarah Estelle, who in 1840 had operated a creamery, a scoop shop, they called it then, right, and a boarding house as an African-American woman. And she did not know that prior to going into the ice cream business. And to have gone around the world, to end up there, to find out that story, it just kind of ties you back to some of the stories that we have as African Americans here in this country, that we don't know a lot about. And the South seems to be rich with those.
Well, I would imagine that no matter where you go, there's a story in every building. right? There's a spirit there. We are working on a project here in Kentucky, and the construction site right next to us found, when they removed the old wall, savings bonds and mail. Right there in a Black neighborhood that's used to be called Little Africa, where a lot of contributors during the 20s, 30s, and 40s were. And I think that what we will find, if we're not just moving too fast, but when we pause and commiserate and share, like this young lady, collecting stories and translating them, is that there's probably a story no matter where you go, everywhere you go. Yeah. We can't presume we're starting with the story. Just like our kids think that they know what they know today. And you want to say, sit down a little bit. My godfather, if I haven't repeated it, too many times, who was Alex Haley, known for Root, he said every time an elder passes, every time a grandparent passes, it's as if a library burns down. So we have to just imagine, whether it's the old barber, whether it's the old, bartender, whether it's the lady at the diner, take a pause, ask a question, and don't move so fast.
Well, there's education in the excavation. Right.
That's right. I love that.
Yeah. And as, we start to find these places, as you just described, what they uncovered from digging up the land and, what we uncover as we find out about some of these stories, like Sarah Estelle, there's an education there, and there's also a healing opportunity, right? Once you know what happened before you, you can kind of better understand your place.
And that there must be an assigned beckoning, right? Something that is for you to be bequeathed with. I think so often for the last couple of generations, we don't realize that we have a trust fund bequeathed us. It's not always determined by cash. It just might be a laying on of hands. It might just be acquiring that building or hearing the narrative or getting that thumbs up. We have to know the currency in that which is bequeathed us.
Yeah, I would say, I may have mentioned this before. I know I've mentioned it to you, but in the autobiography of your dad that you wrote the foreword for, I'm reading that now interspersed in between my workouts every morning. So I'll do a little set and then I'll read, a half a page and do another set, read another half a page. And there's just so much to be gained from every kernel of that story. And I just, I don't know, I felt a connection to it this morning as I was listening to Lokelani talk about Sarah Estelle and, just the importance of us really spending some time and understanding our own history and our journey, I think is just, never loses its importance.
Oh, exactly right. Exactly right. And she's one who 40 years from now, we'll still have those stories passed on. So that's also the joy, that it doesn't end. It may seem quieted, but as soon as we pause and take the time and share and exchange and move around the globe, no matter what that vehicle is, to break bread with people, no matter where they are, you'll learn stories that may not seem to be yours until you realize, in that last morsel, that we have something in common, even if it's the way you exhale after that, that final bite. And, it's
among the things that you and I have in common is a love of sweets. So I know we are going to be headed to Nashville, even though we can mail order that ice cream. I'm down
That's
for
exactly
a trip
right.
and an experience. So
that's exactly right.
Hope you'll roll with me on that one.
All right. I'm there.
Yeah. Ambassador Shabazz, thank you so much. Enjoy your afternoon, and we will be speaking with you soon.
You too. Love to all of yours.
Corner Table Talk is hosted by Brad Johnson, produced by Brad and Linda Ailes Johnson. Theme music, Life Goes On by Bryce Vine. Executive producer, Ken Johnson. Find the Corner Table Talk podcast wherever you get your podcast. Follow, subscribe, rate, and leave a comment. Corner Table Talk is a Mean Old Lion Media production.